Hello again, and welcome to MLR Weekly, as presented by Rugby Wrap-Up, Matt McCarthy in New York City. Thank you for joining us. We have a great show, including USA Rugby, men's 15s, general manager and head coach Scott Lawrence, Bryan Ray of America's Rugby News, and John Fitzpatrick of Rugby Morning. Rugby Wrap-Up's MLR Weekly brought to you by Sheehy Auto Stores. It's easy at Sheehy. The Pig and Whistle, New York City, the world's best rugby pub. And Lean and Limber, stretching your way to a healthier lifestyle. Let's get it started with Rugby Morning's Coffee Break with John Fitzpatrick calling in from Washington, D.C. John, hello, how are you? What do you have for us today?
Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started in here.
You know, this singing theme is a bad one, this thread that you've been on the last...
You're losing viewers, I've noticed.
By the dozens, by the bushel, by the pecks. So let's just stick to rugby this week. You can sing at the end and we'll see if we'll include it. What do you got for us on the MLR front?
Well, speaking of losing viewers, real quick, let's just switch gears.
It's an adverb. It's an adverb.
Yeah, take it up with my English teacher. I don't care.
Okay.
How did your fantasy football team perform against my fantasy football team this weekend?
Great. I have the Lions and the Bills. Next.
Okay, you lost. Hey, let's get some rapid-fire MLR player moves. The New England Free Jacks brought back 4 players from their 2024 championship team. Most notably, 2024 MLR Player of the Year, Wayne Vanderbank. Yep.
Who was not even going to be a starter once LaRue Milan recovered fully from his injury. And every time Vanderbank played, he just played lights out. And you can't bench a guy like that. So kudos to him. Hard work, hard player, strong player, good guy. Next.
Let me just call out a couple other guys. Captain Men's Eagle prop, Caleb Geiger. And then Oscar Lennon, scrum half, who's on the USA Men's Eagles reserve squad for the November test. Those guys are coming back to New England in 2025.
Good stuff. Retention, you know, as Tom kindly said a couple of weeks ago on this program, it's not happening yet, but it's going to be more difficult in a couple of years when retaining players is going to be more difficult for general managers across the league. As contracts expire, World Cup will be over. Yada, yada, yada. Next.
Well, hopefully the salary cap increases as more money flows into the league. But moving on, Matt, Chicago Hounds, they're getting some help from over the pond. They've signed a fly half Tim Sweedle. He's played for Saracens, the Falcons, Harlequins. He's played for the Sharks in the Curry Cup there in South Africa, and likely a replacement for fly half Luke Carty, who was on Chicago, who's unattached right now. Maybe you can ask Scott Lawrence about Luke Carty,
who's in the green room waiting to come on. Not way to plug the next segment.
Hey, how about the Utah Warriors? They're continuing to add a couple more players. 5 more players here. I just want to call out a couple of them here. Former New England Free Jack center Gabe Casey, you may remember him. Former NOLA Gold fullback wing Jordan Trainer, who also played with the Giltinis a couple of years ago, and former Dallas center Nick Ben.
Wow. So they're putting a pretty decent squad back together up there. They let off. It seemed like they were having a mass exodus of players, but instead of piecemeal announcing departures like most teams do, they just did it all at once. So it looked like the team was tanking, but that is definitely not the case. They should be a contender again this year. Let's see if they can get over that hump. Next.
Now, I want to close out with this. I noticed that the election for the World Rugby chair is taking place next week. There are 3 candidates on the list. I do not see Matt McCarthy's name. Matt, what gives with that?
I can't answer that. And I appreciate your consideration, John. I should be on the ballot. Now, why the hell not? Why the hell not? That's my campaign slogan.
We've got a major election coming up that could change the future, the history of everything. Matt McCarthy should be a write-in ballot for the President of the United States or for World Rugby chair. I don't know. One of those two. They seem pretty important.
Well, it's not like it's a write-in thing. There's only a certain amount of people that vote, and those are the people that are voted. They're on the World Rugby Council, I think, if I'm not mistaken. You're throwing a curveball at me right now because we're talking the goddamn MLR. But it could have been an impactful vote had the new guard not wanted to attach themselves to the anthem and maybe said, we're not going to fund you any longer. But that's not the case because it's a 3-year contract, and now we're into year 2 of that 3-year deal. So there'll be at least another year or 2 that World Rugby is committed, regardless of who's the chair, as far as I know. But that doesn't help the people in Canada that are saying, hey, where's our team? Okay, next.
Matt, that's all I got.
All right, John Fitzpatrick with another stellar Rugby Mornings coffee break. John, thank you for coming in.
You send me, honest.
And we're going to send us to commercial break as we wait for Scott Lawrence after this.
You send me, I know you send me, honest you do, honest you do. Oh,
Digs like a demented mole there.
Need a great price on a new vehicle? Sheehy makes it easy. Easy Price shows you our lowest prices on the Mid-Atlantic's largest selection. Find your best price online or at any of our 31 dealerships.
It's easy at Sheehy. Sheehy.com.
You need your cleats? You need them tomorrow? If you order today by 3 p.m. New York time or noon LA time, they can have them to you tomorrow. Young, old, male, female, if you're playing on turf, if you're playing on grass, if you're playing in the rain, you're playing in the heat, they've got you covered. RugbyNow.com. Go there now. And we're back with the general manager / head coach of Team USA, Scott Lawrence.
Yeah, so it's general manager, and it's because we keep the 18s and the 20s and all the pathway teams leading up to the Eagles under one umbrella, and get to coach the national team as well.
And also, you have an imprint on the Carolina Anthem in MLR, which is the franchise initially put on the map to develop USA Eagles, and I think it's still the case. But answer first question for you, Scott. I was under the impression it was an under 23 developmental side, and I couldn't get my head around how that was going to be successful. And that's obviously not the case, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think you have to look at your performance objectives. So if you think about the anthem from a headline perspective and developing Eagles, the performance objectives can change from year to year or every 2 years in cycles if you think of them as part of the pathway to the Eagles. So this year into 2025, there's World Cup qualification is happening through Pacific Nations Cup. And so team cohesion and player cohesion is important. So, those are the performance objectives I gave to the staff there, was to collect as many Eagles that would feasibly be in that campaign this year. And then they may change again. Last year, the objectives were different. It was to produce professionals, 10 professionals, and that was largely focused at a younger age. So it'll change depending on what's needed in the overall performance plan.
That's an important component here, that people are all just talking about 2031, 2031, 2031, but we got to qualify for World Cups right in front of us as well.
Yeah.
And that's an important component of this too. If you just march out under 23-year-olds or 20 U21s, and then you don't get into the World Cup, that defeats the whole purpose of preparing for 2031.
World Cups are massively important. That's where teams really grow as internationals. That's where you get results, is when you have a squad that's largely together for 2 World Cups. If you think about it from a funding perspective, the funding goes up, you get more time together. And then there's the months leading into the World Cup and the World Cup itself. And those months where you're not competing, you're not preparing for a game 6 days from now, is where you really grow as a team, or countries grow. So when we look at the November series, which we're up against, and you look at Portugal, who did get that opportunity and did go to the last World Cup, and see how much they've improved since the U.S. played them in a qualifier, in the Repechage. They've improved massively. So we've got to get into the next World Cup. That's important for us to catch up. Yeah, I think you look at what those teams have been doing, and Spain and Portugal both had the European Cup that they were in earlier this year, that European Championship. So they've got test matches already. Spain's been together for the last 6 weeks.
Wow.
In camp. So we know that's not feasible at our scale. And and our funding level. So what we do is a lot of different things. We kind of piece it together in a very American entrepreneurial way. I mean, I think the first thing is starting during the year and working with clubs in Major League Rugby to make sure that we're sharing co-development plans and working closely with them in season. As we get into the off season, the ARP clubs on the East Coast have been fantastic, and bringing in Eagles and allowing them to get club games and time together. No, they've all been really gracious in getting guys minutes, and then I think those are important ways to do it. And then we make a big push towards next year. I think time together is going to be huge for the team next year, and that'll be the big philanthropic push for us next year, is to get time for the Eagles to qualify.
So when you say that, you mean you need money?
Always, yeah. Money is
right?
time.
We need donors. We need money.
Right? Yeah, money is time, and time is money, and that's what gets us time together. You got to feed them, house them, pay them, coaches, players, and that's what it takes.
So you basically inherited a mess, and you won't say it, but I'll say it. You did, and you inherited a mess. So how is the time together increased since before you had the reins?
I think if we look at the Pacific Nations Cup this year and then this test series, we did get more games. We'll have 9 test games this year, and that's a pretty hefty haul of games for us. So I think that's been an improvement in the time together. I think the thing I just keep coming back to is that where you get real growth is non-competitive weeks. So if you think about Romania, some of the players didn't arrive till Monday. We played on a Friday night. They hadn't been together for 7 months. So the development of the team is more just like, let's just make sure we know the set piece moves and that we can go play.
I mean, you got to keep it very basic.
Very, very basic. And then, then you're preparing for a tier 1 nation in Scotland the next week. So your entire performance focuses on that. So the games are one piece of the puzzle. Meaningful minutes at the test match level, that is a massive piece. That time that you get in camp. And I go back to last year when we decided to kind of save our pennies and pull them up and give us 3 weeks before we played Romania in our first test last year. We spent 3 weeks together without preparing for a game, and arguably had one of our best performances in the last 2 years. Off of the back of that, we were able to build and grow through that series. And then the Utah Warriors supporting us and playing Toulouse was huge. That gave us another week together, and then ultimately led into the fall series where we played our best rugby of the year. So it all kind of fits together, and it's important we get those non-competitive weeks.
So with the structure of the MLR season and your needs, what's the ideal amount of matches and the ideal amount of time together?
I think for 2025, I'll just be very specific to next year. I think it is definitely about a 12-week campaign.
12
total.
weeks together, spread out over
Yeah.
how many windows?
3 windows. Spread out over 3
4
windows.
weeks together for each window, approximately.
Yeah, approximately. 4 weeks for me is the ideal number, because in the first week you're trying to install the basics. In the second week, you're at a deeper level with the players. The communication builds. You start to see their game in more detail. Even though you've been watching them all year, you've now got your hands on them. Relationships form, feedback happens, games get played. And then by the time you get to the 4th week, you're kind of like you're operating as if you're a team. And then you go home and do it all over again.
So let's talk MLR a little bit. And I had Sam Gala on last week, who was formerly of the now defunct Dallas Jackals. Unfortunately, they went out of the league, but that's your gain. And he was rumored to be going to San Diego. And when I spoke to him, he was very transparent, very, very clear about for him, it's country first. It's Eagles first. He certainly wants to win a shield. Don't get him wrong, but he wants to play his best rugby that he can play for the Eagles. And he got me fired up during that interview. And I'm like, okay, so is the goal to like mirror the Selknam Super Rugby America's team in Super Rugby South America that's got all the Chilean players on it, basically? I think they had 19 of the players that you had to play against last year had been continually playing. Is that what you want? And how much brushback are you getting from some of the owners in the MLR?
I think for 2025, I think as many of them playing together as possible, so you build cohesion and working with the national team coaches is the right performance objective for the team this year. So yes, will we have all of the Eagles in one team? Salary cap wouldn't fit it. So we know that that's not a possibility, but we do know that more time together with coaches and players does lead to better results, which I think we talked about. So I think that's the right thing for this year. We have to remember that everybody, and I say everybody, that's me included for the Eagles, for our country, for Major League Rugby franchises, everybody is just trying to do the best they can to win for their team, whether that's in Major League Rugby or not. So, of course, there's competition for players and there's competition for fixtures and all those other things inside of that. So, to answer your question, we won't be a Sepnum, we won't be a Penarol. We have more than one team in our entire country.
Yeah,
we have an entire league. And so it's going to look as close as we can to cohesion in this next year, and then as that progresses, it'll look like what's needed next.
Well, I named Sam Gala, but you got some other exciting players coming in. You got Mitch Wilson coming in. You got Connor Mooneyham coming in. I mean, these are exciting players, and these guys. When I brought up 0-16 to Sam, I said, Sam, you're coming from what was an 0-16 team in Dallas, and then had the rise to being a very good team. And then on the cusp of that, you're choosing to go to an 0-16 team. And if he was next to me, he probably would have squashed my head like a grape. But he's tired of answering that question, apparently, because he's been asked. And to him, this is not an 0-16 team. He is not, and if anybody's got the experience of going through that, it's him.
Yeah, I think from a pathway perspective, I think what you heard from Sam is exactly right. We need more guys in the Eagles who will bleed for the jersey, that want it, that put it as a priority in their life. And trust me, it is not easy, and it does not pay well.
Yeah,
and you have
been under the
really,
USA umbrella myself. I got a glimpse of it. Yeah, it's peanuts.
Yeah, so it has to be an identity. It has to be who you are. We call it Eagle 365, and Sam is exactly that. So there's other guys that are like-minded in that regard, and that they're chasing the dream. They want to go to a World Cup. They want to help build towards a 2031 quarterfinal win for our country, and do that along 2027. So, the guys that I'm excited about that are also in that team are guys like Lene Latu, who was in the Eagle pool in 2023. He went to a team, didn't get a lot of game time, ended up out of the pool, but now he's going to get starting minutes at 10 every week in Major League Rugby.
All right, final question for you. What is the expectation of the tour?
I think we've got a few performance objectives. So one, we're going to have 8 new players into the squad of 30. So it's increasing. We'll push our playing pool above 52 this year. So it's growing test match experience, and which will give me a bigger pool to pick from as I go into the next season. So I think that's the first thing. I think from a second thing from our perspective is maintain and slightly improve our defensive game, but on an attacking standpoint, we need to value possession. We need to attack better than we have through the PNC. So that's a major focus area for us. And finally, it's setting the basics for the skill acquisition that's required of the players, both coaches detail and player detail, around building skill acquisition habits that will take them through their Major League Rugby season. And so we can continue development into next year.
All right. And I would add, for your selling point to Eagles, not that you should have to sell somebody on the Eagles, but I'm just looking at this trip and I'm like, okay, I'm going to be in Madrid. I'm going to be in Chambéry, France, which is just south of Geneva. I could skip into Geneva for the day. I'm also going to be in Portugal, 100 miles north of Lisbon. I mean, this is all cool stuff. Yeah, especially, I know they're not getting a lot of money, but it ain't on their dime, which is pretty cool to see countries and play rugby over there.
Yeah, no, it's that's definitely a perks of the job is you get to see the world and I always tell people I would have never been to Krasnoyarsk, Russia, had I not played for USAA against Russia.
Right. Anyway, thank you, Coach. Thanks for coming on. Much appreciated.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks, Matt.
All right, we'll be right back with Mr. Bryan Ray after this.
I wouldn't like to be at the bottom of that.
Hey, U.S. fans, you can tune into every match live on Flow Rugby. How do we know that? Because we're on there all the time. If you're in New York City and want to watch some great rugby, have some great food, and some great times, go to the world's best rugby pub, the Pig and Whistle on West 36th Street. This is the Rugby Odds, where an unlikely pundit panel of a wordsmith, a WWE legend, a rugby star, and a supermodel scour the globe, seeking best bets and bad behavior. Are you not entertained? And we are back, and we're very happy to welcome back Bryan Ray of America's Rugby News. Bryan, I know that you were up against it with some family issues, your dad. It's great to have you back, and I'm sorry what you had to go through.
Thanks. Appreciate all the well wishes, and it's good to be back and hopefully getting back into a bit of a rhythm again.
All right, well, let's get you in your rhythm, Bryan, because right out of the gate, your rhythm has been to wear the attire of a franchise and have a backdrop of a franchise. And here you are with what looks just to be a heavenly rugby pitch, but you're all decked out in Dallas Jackals attire or gear. What's the story there?
Well, this is, in fact, heaven behind me, and that's the new pitch of the Dallas Jackals because they're not around anymore. So sad, really, after what was really an exciting season for Dallas fans, just when things were looking up and, the players are really delivering at the end. You'd have to say probably the most exciting team in Major League Rugby this past season, and sadly, they didn't have the management structure behind them to keep them going. So unfortunately, those players will be all at pastures new this coming year. But just want to give a shout out to Dallas fans and the players. Thanks for the memories, and that's how it goes, I guess.
All right. So what news? I mean, you must have a lot on your mind. I noticed you're back on Twitter. You're going right back at your old ways. So what's first and foremost on your mind about the MLR?
Well, I mean, it's just been interesting kind of, the whole Dallas dropping out and then lots of kind of rumors, scurries here or there about potential teams in the future. But it does look like they're going to go with 11 teams next year. So, that's certainly interesting. You could say it's a retraction, but I mean, there's 11 teams in Super Rugby. It's not like it's the only, competition in the world that's had this kind of thing happen. And I think you got to look at it from also the perspective. We've got a lot of interesting new talent coming into MLR. The American Raptors aren't around anymore, so certainly a lot of their better players will be heading to MLR. I think we had the deepest draft in MLR history by a distance. I think a lot of those players will make an impact, if not next year, then if not this year, then next year. And, all those domestic, the best Dallas guys are going to other teams. So that pool of domestic talent, I think, is going to lift this coming year. And I think that that's a really good sign for MLR. And that's not even to say about all the imports that are on the way and some high quality international additions as well.
All right. So who's the big name that's coming in?
Just waiting to see who it is. I mean, at the moment, the biggest signing of the offseason has to be my Free Jacks picking up Geronimo Gomez-Vara. I mean, we've seen him in MLR, but I just love that move for all the reasons. And I think there's some big names to come. We haven't really seen the big blockbusters yet, but I think there's a couple players on the way who might move the needle a little bit.
And we just had Scott Lawrence in, who is the general manager / head coach of the men's Eagles program and tied with the Anthem of Carolina. And, you know, I mentioned the fact that I thought, like many of us did, was that this was a developmental side under 23. And that is quickly becoming the incorrect opinion of that franchise. They are signing some very good players.
Yeah, I think even just looking at this past year, you know, it wasn't quite exactly what we thought it was going to be. I mean, it wasn't far off, but it was a little bit different. And looking at this coming year, yeah, absolutely. I think they're looking a little bit more towards those qualifiers for next year, and just getting those kind of fringe Eagles guys who, you know, together on one team. Kind of, it's not going to be an Eagles squad, but there certainly are going to be some senior Eagles in that lineup. I mean, Sam Galla moving from Dallas to Anthem is a huge pickup for them. Connor Mooneyham, they picked him up from Seattle. Alex Mon coming in from LA, and there's other guys.
Mitch Wilson from New England.
Mitch
Junior
Wilson.
Gaffa.
Yeah, well, Junior was there last year, but he's certainly looking for another big season from him. I really hope that he gets a crack at the Eagles next season. He was absolutely outstanding this past year. So they're going to be a decent team. Certainly not going to be the pushovers they were last year. But you're right, it's not that under 23 side. It's going to be some experienced guys. Mikey Grandy coming over from the American Raptors is promising. Big second row, so he's one to watch as well. So I'm certainly looking forward to watching Anthem play.
What team do you think has done the best so far in the offseason?
Well, I mean, I'm always singing the praises of my Free Jacks, but man, they just don't seem to make any mistakes. I think they've done an outstanding job so far. I think Seattle's had some interesting recruits. You know, we haven't seen all the departures list yet. I've heard a couple rumors. So, you know, I think there's quality leaving and quality coming there. So that'll be interesting to see how Seattle goes. It certainly looks like they're going to have a monstrous pack next season.
Yeah, they beefed up that front row. They've got depth there.
And then they've got big CC Mahoney coming in from Houston, another South African lock. So they're going to be a big side. That'll be interesting. I think there's still quite a few recruits to come. Utah's been pretty busy. You know, I think there's maybe a debate whether it's overall an upgrade or not. I think there's a lot of kind of untested names coming in, or certainly, you know, guys we're not entirely up to speed on yet. So we'll see how that goes. Right now, I think the Free Jacks look amazing. If anything, they look stronger this coming year, which does not bode well for their opponents. But there's a couple more Canucks they haven't announced yet, I know for sure, that are heading there. So I'm really excited to see how that Boston team goes again.
Interesting. All right. Well, Bryan, it's great to have you back. Thank you to Mr. Bryan Ray of America's Rugby News. Thanks to Scott Lawrence of Team USA. And thanks to John Fitzpatrick of Rugby Morning's Coffee Break. And thank you for tuning in. Please check out our other programs, including the critically acclaimed The Rugby Odds. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Sign up for our weekly newsletter. And please join our American Red Cross blood donor team. Yeehaw!